And we're here. We're going to dive in to the New York Knicks. The New York Knicks are in a fascinating position to me because I don't know what they should do. This is one where I truly have no, like, I'm going to say this up front while we talk about this. I truly have no idea what this team should do. I have an inkling on where I'm at with them, but I don't think they have like a great decision for this year necessarily now. They're currently sitting at 17-13. They're currently down 11 to Orlando as we talk about this. So potentially going to 17-14. They've held the tide since Mitch has been out. Mitchell Robinson is out for the season with an ankle injury at this point. Last game of the year was on December 8th. Since that date, the Knicks have given up 122.9 points per 100 possessions. That's 27th in the league. They've gone from being one of the best rebounding teams in all of the NBA, with Mitchell Robinson and Julius Randle completely controlling the paint, to being like middle of the pack. They're 14th in defensive rebounding rate and 12th in offensive rebounding rate since losing Mitchell Robinson. The big thing here is that people way undervalue everything that Mitch brings to them. He brings them extra possessions. He's a really good pick and roll defender. He's a great rebounder. Like he's just all over the place for them. He's so athletic. He's tough. He's physical on the interior. He's just kind of an ass kicker in there. Like he's strong as hell for somebody that like he looks lanky, but like he's not that lanky. Like he really is physically powerful. And Mitch Rob is like a great example of why on-offs like don't tell the full story in terms of defensive impact. If you look at the Knicks defensive rating without Mitchell Robinson on the court this season, it's 116.8. If you look at him on the court, it's only 115.5. But the reason for that is because Isaiah Hartenstein is maybe the best backup big in the entire NBA. The fact that they can bring in Hartenstein and like not lose a crazy amount of rim protection and drop coverage wherewithal, I think is like so big for them being able to be impactful and effective on the court over 48 minutes of a game. If you can get 48 minutes of Mitch Rob and Hartenstein, it's huge. You take Mitch away from that, the whole thing crumbles. Like you lose 30 minutes of a dude who's just like a total ass kicker in the paint. Originally, they were starting like Jericho Sims after that because I think they wanted to like kind of keep the bench unit together. They played Hartenstein like 29 minutes and Jericho Sims like 18 to 20 minutes per game. But the lineups with Sims have generally struggled. In total, they're only negative 0.6 per 100 possessions without Robinson since that injury, though. And it's because of Brunson just going nuts. I want to start with the defensive side of the court. Are you as worried about the Knicks defensively as I am without Mitchell Robinson?
Yeah, I think he was really good on that end of the floor. Just looking at the numbers, just the box score numbers, 1.3 blocks maybe doesn't blow you away. He also averaged 1.5 steals, Sam. So he's at almost 3 stocks a game. The rebounding offensively is where he's elite, but he's still bringing down rebounds on the defensive end. Even if Hartenstein is doing the same thing, but he can't play all of those minutes, right? Like you just outlined it all. Like Hartenstein, I think I love him because he's one of the best backup bigs in the league, not because he's one of the best starting bigs in the league. Mitchell Robinson was having an insane year, and you lose that anchor, and it goes to everybody else. It trickles down to everybody else. Everybody else has to pick up the slack in some way. So yes, I am nervous about that. And it's unfortunate because I was really excited about this Knicks team. And I'm with you in terms of, is there a short-term answer to stay as competitive as what you want to be? I don't know that you want to go make some crazy move for long-term because he will be like the roster is just interesting as I look through it in terms of who's still around next year, Sam. But then you have the Emmanuel Quickley thing as well. And the elephant in the room, or the not so kept secret of them compiling things to make a huge move whenever that huge move becomes available.
Yeah. And I want to talk about that in a minute here because just figuring out where they decide to go is really, really interesting. I'm completely with you on that. That like you can see the kind of tide turning in some of the reporting about the Knicks. The reason they've been able to stay afloat without Mitchell Robinson is Jalen Brunson.
Yeah,
Jalen Brunson is averaging 29 points
so good.
on 51, 49, 81 shooting with 7 assists per game since Mitchell Robinson went out. He had that enormous like 50-point game. He has been unconscious. It feels like every time I watch him, his footwork, his patience, his poise. Like I tweeted about this watching the Christmas Day game. Andre Jackson is a really good defender. Like
Yeah.
he is somebody that is like active, aggressive, extremely athletic, never gets tired, great feel for the game, but he's really, really jumpy and he is over aggressive. And just watching Jalen Brunson exploit that and understand how to take advantage of these like super athletic, jumpy guys with just polish and poise and footwork and intelligence. It's really beautiful to watch. He is one of my favorite players to watch in the NBA, like undeniably.
The thing with him as well, as I was looking at his career numbers, Sam, I love guys that just continue to get better and continue to get better
Yeah.
and continue to get better. And that's what he's done. His points, his field goal attempts, but field goal percentage stays the same. 3-point or relatively the same. 3-point attempts have gone up. 3-point percentage has gone up along with it. Free throw attempts. And I think the number that sticks out to me is looking at him in Dallas, as you would imagine, like 80% of his 3-point attempts were assisted. That's down to below 60 with the Knicks. So this is a kid, a guy, I don't mean to call him a kid. This is a grown man who went from the role he had in Dallas, where he was really good, went to New York, took on the number one option role where he's not getting open looks just created by Luka and all these things. Not only has he been good and taken that role on, he's still been efficient with it. It's incredible. And I know like the whole size, height thing came up. Like I understood the comment and all of that. I want to say this. I've said this multiple times now in a row. I believe you have to have the best player in the series. So, blah, blah, blah. Jalen Brunson is good enough to be the best player in a series. I don't know if he's good enough to do it for 4 series, Sam,
Yeah.
but I think Jalen Brunson could take over and hijack a single series in the playoffs. And I'm not saying against just some team that's, luckily limped into the playoffs. I'm saying against just about anybody, he could he's good enough to do it. I'm not saying he will, but he is good enough to do it.
Well, I mean, he's done it in 2 straight years on some level, right? Like the Knicks beat the Cavs in that series last year. He averaged in the playoffs last season for the Knicks 27.8 points on 47, 33, 91, right? And then in the Dallas, that like playoff run by Dallas with Luka where they made the conference finals, like he was really, really good. He was awesome in those games. I wouldn't say he was the best player on the court or anything, but he was really, really good. He is clearly going to be like a dude that you can trust in the playoffs. Look, I agree with Becky Hammond. I don't think he can be the best player on a title team.
Agreed.
But who cares? He's great. You know what I mean? Like he's an awesome dude. Like I don't know why. Like that's I understood why Becky said it. Like I think Becky was fine. I think that like the people that made a big deal out of it. Like it's just weird to me. Like we can just appreciate Jalen Brunson for what he is, and he's unbelievable. And he's like a borderline All NBA player this year. But the difference between borderline All NBA and Nikola Jokic, Giannis, etc., is just drastic. Like it's such a big difference. So, regardless, now let's talk about kind of where they go from here, because I don't have an answer. That's what like worries me. I've seen the reporting about Dejounte Murray and apparently like Leon Rose and some of the people in the Knicks front office, according to Stephen Bondi, at one of the New York papers. I think he just switched papers, saying that they think Dejounte is a really good fit with Jalen Brunson. And they think that could be like an interesting move for the organization if the Hawks decide to break up the Trae Young, Dejounte Murray deal. I think that's a terrible idea. Like I'm just going to flat out say that. I think that is a horrific idea, because Dejounte playing with Trae Young, The issue is that like they play like my turn, your turn, and the Hawks have now realized under Quinn Snyder that Trae Young is the guy that you just should have the ball in his
Yeah.
hands all the time, because of course you should. Like, he just went on a run, I think, of the most consecutive 30-point, 10 assist games in NBA history. He has been unbelievable this season. Dejounte, for his part, like, hasn't been bad. Like, I don't want to sit here and say he's been terrible. He's averaging 20 points, 4.5 rebounds, 5.3 assists, but I don't think Dejounte's game works to elevate guys that are incredible on the ball. And I think what you would do is be in a similar situation to what the Hawks are right now with Trae Young, with Jalen Brunson in New York. Like, Jalen has been so good on the ball, and I trust him to make high level decisions. I think Dejounte, like, is a guy that you want to put the ball in his hands and let him do things a little bit more often. There's a case, certainly, I guess, that like you could put the ball in his hands in bench units, but you already have Emmanuel Quickly, who is awesome.
Really good.
And like another guy that we should probably not finish this conversation without talking about. Emmanuel Quickly has been great again this season. Now, like, if your idea is that Dejounte is signed to a deal that is like pretty reasonable over the course of the next 4 years beyond this one, and we think that Emmanuel Quickly is going to get paid more maybe than Dejounte Murray does, I'll hear out that reasoning at least. I don't think I agree with it, but I'll like listen to it and try and understand it. I'd be surprised if he got 30 million a year personally, but I think Emmanuel is like worth that money, given that that's like Tyler Hero, Jordan Poole, you know, et cetera money. The point is though, like, I would not move Emmanuel Quickly, and I would just keep him and pay him. And on top of it, if you're keeping Emmanuel Quickly and you already have Jalen Brunson, why would you bring in another guy that like is an on-ball, like dominant player at his best in order to do that?
Well, I think what everybody and this is probably the Hawks idea, right? Was you bring in Dejounte defensively to pair next to a Trae Young, and you bring in a Dejounte to, pair next to Jalen Brunson and take the workload off there. And then it's, the issues on the other end. We've talked about this, and just how do you get the most out of both players, out of everybody on your roster? And you're not going to get 100% of everybody, right? Like, there's going to be some overlap within your roster. You're not going to get the best version, but you want to get as close to that as possible. And so you have to really ask yourself, if you bring Dejounte Murray into the fold, if Jalen Brunson's at 100% now, are you going to bring him down to 80% by putting the ball into Dejounte's hand? Or are you only going to get 80% of Dejounte because you're keeping it in Jalen's? If you put him in the second unit, what percentage of IQ are you going to get from him at that point? And so that makes sense. I think the idea of the name, whenever you first say it, I'm like, okay. And then you talk about the money, especially if it is, you move on from Quickly, but it's like, it seems like there would be a likelihood that it would be clunky in the same way that we've seen. I think one thing we've learned, or I feel like, dudes that come in and play on the ball, Sam, it's not that easy for them to go play off the ball. I think it's real easy to say, well, just let Jalen do some off ball stuff and spot up and those type of things. And it's like, it's not always easy to ask those guys to do that. And it's not always easy to make that adjustment. There's just, when you play the game with the ball in your hand, Sam, there's something about it. There's just, you get into a flow and a rhythm, and there's guys that grew up doing it and guys that didn't.
So here's the case though. Like, Jalen did it with Luka, right?
Yes.
Like, he did it. Here's the thing though. Jalen Brunson's better than Dejounte Murray as an offensive player.
Yeah.
He just is. So you don't want to take the ball out of Jalen Brunson's hands for the idea of just going to get Dejounte Murray. I don't think this is like a kind of side conversation, but it feeds into what I think is the important conversation about the Knicks of, I don't know who they go out and get.
Yeah.
Like, I actually don't know who the name is that makes sense for them, which means I kind of think that they're stuck. And like, Knicks fans are going to be like disappointed by that, because obviously they want, to win games, and they want to show progress on last season's Eastern Conference semifinals berth, and continue to take those next steps forward. It'll feel like a bit of like a stasis, I feel like, if they just win 43 games again, 45 games again, and go out in the first or second round of the playoffs. But the reality is that the way that Leon Rose and those guys in this front office have constructed this thing is they're waiting for a star to come available. And once that star comes available, they'll be able to present a package. They're kind of relying on that stasis in some way, continuing to show competency, continuing to show real positive play, even with Mitchell Robinson out, even with some of these, guys continuing to grow and Julius Randle continuing to work his way into the season as he typically does. Finding that next guy is always the hardest part, and they need the number one guy. I don't think they need a Dejounte Murray number 2. I don't think they need a number 3. They need a 1. And to me, that guy isn't on the market right now. Unless Donovan Mitchell maybe comes available, unless somebody else comes available.
No, I think that's right. I think you have to wait it out and continue to be patient to find the right guy. And then you have the assets and all of that stuff to go get it. I think the only thing I'd be interested in is, can you make a move on the margins without hurting that long-term flexibility, without hurting those long-term assets to go get a center, to at least back up Hartenstein or be the 24-minute-a-night starter. But you don't want to give up the assets that then, put you back from being able to give the best offer whenever that star comes available. So, because some of these first round picks, I was looking at this today also, Sam, the Dallas one will most likely convey this season.
Yeah.
But the Detroit and Washington ones, I don't know how teams will value those because they're still pretty decent. Like, I don't think that Washington one, it may never convey. And the Detroit one probably isn't going to for a couple years still. So it's not like those are unprotected. Like, I would be interested to know how NBA teams value those first round picks. Now, obviously the Knicks have all of their own as well, but yeah, I don't, unless that name comes available, like you said, and you can just go ahead and swing. It would kind of stink to swing at the deadline knowing you didn't have Robinson for the rest of the year, but you get that person in, acclimated, build over the offseason, then you're ready to go to the start of next year.
Yeah, a couple other notes here as well, just on the Knicks. Like, they have picks, they have 2 top 20-ish, top 23 picks somewhere in the post-lottery 22 range right now. Their own in Dallas's.
Yep.
This is a team that I think could draft players and like roster them. If you look at the back end of this roster right now, it's a wasteland in a lot of ways, right? They're going to lose the Yvonne Fournier contract in all likelihood at the end of this season, maybe in the middle of this season, who knows? I think that you can make a reasonable case for them doing something like Yvonne Fournier and one of those picks for a player. I don't know who the player is. I'm just going to be upfront with that. I don't know what they did that last year with Josh Hart, obviously, right? They went out and got Josh Hart. Good player, helps them certainly. You could do something like that again. I think it'd be completely reasonable to be able to go and do something like that again. Again, I'm just not sure what I'm not sure who the guy is, I guess, this year. Also,
I want to say Mitchell Robinson is on an incredible contract. That's a descending contract. Sorry, I got distracted here looking at their cap sheet and just, they have, Julius Randle has 1 more year than a player option. Brunson is 1 more year and a player option. So it's really interesting. We talked about quickly this offseason. Then you have a couple other guys coming up after that. There's just they've been patient and I respect it. It seems like it's going to come to a head, not at the deadline, definitely not at the deadline. This offseason or by the next deadline, it just seems like this is going to come to a head. I appreciate the patience, but at a certain point, you just have to go make your move. And I think that's probably coming up in the next 12 months or so.
I will say, I just thought about this. They could be the Caruso team.
Okay.
That would actually make a lot of sense to pair Caruso with Jalen Brunson.
Yeah.
And God, can you imagine a coach that would love Alex Caruso more than Tom Thibodeau? My God. And they have all these random picks that are there, right? So it's interesting. That's an interesting one that.
Yeah, I was just the nice thing. The nice thing for them is they still have all of their own picks as well. So if you want to do the whole 3 firsts and 3 pick swaps and, I don't know, the days of those may be gone, but yeah, that they have they have a plethora where they could go get Caruso, and I believe he's on a really, really good contract as well.
Yeah. Yeah. In terms of like bigs that are available, like Kelly Olynyk, I guess, but I don't know. Like, does Olynyk strike you as a like Thibodeau guy that would make sense? Like, not really to me, to be honest. There just aren't a lot of guys that really truly stand out on the market right now for the Knicks to like fill their hole that they need. Andre Drummond maybe hits the market, like something like that. Scow's Roar brings up Dan Gafford. If Dan Gafford comes available, absolutely. But I just don't like, I don't know if you want to do that kind of like, I don't know if Washington's going to want to do that. He's been really good this year when I've watched them. So,
Well, the interesting thing
yeah,
is you don't need a long-term guy either. Like that's what's, because Robinson's back and you have Hartenstein and so you have those guys still. So you don't want to go crazy. Oh, I guess Hartenstein's unrestricted.
yeah,
So,
yeah, he'll be
okay.
unrestricted at the end of
Yeah,
the
yeah.
year.
So I guess there's an argument there to go get a guy that can, if you don't want to bring Hartenstein back, that could just slide into the backup role next year with Robinson.
Yeah, Gafford's a guy that generally like throughout the course of his career has not played crazy minute loads. Like even right now, he's playing like 25 minutes a night. It's not in. That's actually like one of the better names I've heard. But I feel like he's one of the names Washington would be least likely to move. I would think, right?
Yeah, and he's on a good contract. He, the start of 12, 13, 14 million over the next couple of years. So, that's that's a very interesting name.
Yeah. And final thing here, YouTube user brings up, will Mitchell Robinson ever play a full season? Honestly, like I don't know the answer to that. Like I think it's a reasonable question to ask. He played 72 games in 2021-22. It's closest he's gotten. He plays so physically and he's so long and like he's so tough and like strong. Like he takes a beating in there because of the way he plays. Like I think that the Knicks are a team that probably will always have to invest in having a really good backup center with Mitchell Robinson. And that's not a slight at Mitchell. Like I say all of those things as a compliment to him in terms of how physical and how aggressive he plays. But it's a real concern, I think, whether or not Mitch will ever play a